Okay, today is the 2nd of August, and we are on the 21st Samyutta, Bhikkhu Samyutta. Now we come to 21.10. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. On that occasion, a certain monk named Elder was a lone dweller and spoke in praise of dwelling alone. He entered the village for alms alone. He returned alone. He sat alone in private. He undertook walking meditation alone. Then a number of monks approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said to him, "Here, Venerable Sir, there is a certain monk named Elder, who is a lone dweller and who speaks in praise of dwelling alone." Then the Blessed One addressed a certain monk thus, "Come, monk, tell the monk Elder in my name, that the teacher calls him." "Yes, Venerable Sir," that monk replied. And he went to the Venerable Elder and told him, "The teacher calls you, friend Elder." "Yes, friend," the Venerable Elder replied. And he approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. The Blessed One then said to him, "Is it true, Elder, that you are a lone dweller, and speak in praise of dwelling alone?" "Yes, Venerable Sir." "But how, Elder, are you a lone dweller, and how do you speak in praise of dwelling alone?" "Here, Venerable Sir, I enter the village for alms alone. I return alone. I sit alone in private, and I undertake walking meditation alone. It is in such a way that I am a lone dweller, and speak in praise of dwelling alone." And the Buddha said, "That is a way of dwelling alone, Elder. I do not deny this. But as to how dwelling alone is fulfilled in detail, listen to that and attend closely, I will speak." "Yes, Venerable Sir." "And how, Elder, is dwelling alone fulfilled in detail?" "Here, Elder, what lies in the past has been abandoned. What lies in the future has been relinquished, and desire and lust for present forms of individual existence has been thoroughly removed. It is in such a way, Elder, that dwelling alone is fulfilled in detail." This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said this: "The Wise One, all conqueror, all knower, among all things unsullied, the all cast off, liberated in the destruction of craving, I call that person one who dwells alone." That's the end of the sutta. So here, this monk by the name of Elder, he kept to himself, and so he claimed to be a lone dweller. But the Buddha said, that is true, but that is not fulfilled in detail. And the Buddha said, dwelling alone actually is to relinquish the past and don't crave for future rebirth, future existence. And even the present one, present forms of individual existence has been thoroughly removed. Desire and lust for it has been thoroughly removed. In other words, one has totally let go all desire for existence. Then there's nothing to occupy the mind. Then the Buddha says that is dwelling alone. So the Buddha is trying to say dwelling alone is not so much the physical aspect, although the physical aspect is one aspect, but the Buddha says the mind, being alone in the mind, not having a mind that is occupied with this or that, that is really dwelling alone. This dwelling alone, sometimes it is the Pali word is viveka, seclusion. And the Buddha and the suttas talk about kaya viveka and chitta viveka. Kaya viveka is like this monk, bodily secluded. He lives in a secluded place, for example, in a cave or high up in the hills or in the forest alone. That is kaya viveka. Or even if he stays in a monastery with other monks, he does not socialize with other monks. He keeps aloof. That is kaya viveka. But chitta viveka is a higher standard. Chitta viveka is mental seclusion. That means your mind is detached. Detached from what? Detached from the world of the six senses. So, because the world of the six senses is dukkha, it's also a source of a lot of contact. If you have eye contact, you have ear contact, you have nose contact, tongue, body, and mind contact. And because of contact, feelings arise, and then thoughts, and all that. The mind keeps going. So, mental seclusion is meditating and going deep into your mind, attaining samadhi. When you attain samadhi, then slowly the world of the six senses withdraws away from you. So you are going back, as Ajahn Chah says, you're going back to our original home, going back deep into our mind. And Arahants constantly abide in that way, Chitta Viveka, secluded from the world. So the Buddha says that is more superior. 21.11, that's Sabbati. Then the Venerable Mahakapina approached the Blessed One. The Blessed One saw him coming in the distance and addressed the monks thus: "Monks, do you see that monk coming, fair-skinned, thin, with a prominent nose?" "Yes, Venerable Sir." "That monk is of great psychic power and might. It is not easy to find an attainment which that monk has not already attained. And he is one who, by realizing it for himself with direct knowledge, in this very life enters and dwells in that unsurpassed goal of the holy life, for the sake of which clansmen rightly go forth from the household life into homelessness." This is what the Blessed One said. Having said this, the Fortunate One, the teacher, further said, "The Khattiya is the best among people." Khattiya is a warrior clan, noble clan. Khattiya is the best among people. For those whose standard is the clan. For one accomplished in knowledge and conduct is best among devas and humans. The sun shines by day, the moon glows at night. The Khattiya shines clad in armor. The meditative Brahmana shines, the holy man shines. But all the time, day and night, the Buddha shines with glory. It's the end of the sutta. So in this sutta, the Buddha is telling his disciples, look at this Mahakapina, is one of the great Arahants with mighty psychic power. This one, Mahakapina, is fair-skinned, is thin, with a prominent nose. So he's one of the four monks, if you remember, when we read the Samyutta about the Brahma, how the Buddha flew to the Brahma heavens and emitted light, and four of his disciples came and sat in mid-air below the Buddha, who were then Mahamoggallana, Anuruddha, Mahakapina, Mahakassapa. These are the most powerful Arahants. Now we have just finished the second book of the Samyutta Nikaya. Now we are coming into the third book of the Samyutta Nikaya, one of the most important books in all the Nikayas. It's called the Khandha, the book of the aggregates. Khandha stands for aggregates, meaning the five aggregates. The five aggregates are the body, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And these five aggregates we associate with the self. Either as I or mine, or I am in the aggregates, or the aggregates are inside me. Now this Khandha, the name of the book is the Khandha. It's named after the first Samyutta, which dominates the entire collection. The Vaga contains, this book, 13 Samyuttas, but none of the minor ones even approaches the length of the Khandha Samyutta. The first Samyutta is the Khandha Samyutta, occupies in the Pali text 188 pages out of the total 278 pages of the book, which means 2/3 of this book is taken up by one Samyutta itself, the Khandha Vaga. And then not only that, there are 3 other Samyuttas inside this book, which also have to do with the 5 aggregates. So Practically this whole book has to do with the 5 aggregates, Khandha Samyutta. This Khandha Samyutta contains 159 suttas. And these suttas on the 5 aggregates are the most important of all the Buddha's discourses. Because the best way to see anatta, to attain liberation, is to contemplate on the 5 aggregates. There are another 2 ways, is to contemplate on the 6 sense basis, the 6 sense basis. Another one is to contemplate on paticca samuppada, dependent origination. But generally, the Buddha says that contemplating the 5 aggregates is the most important. So that's why I say that the suttas here are the most important of all the Buddha suttas. And inside this Khandha Samyutta, the first Samyutta, we find the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. Anatta Lakkhana Sutta was spoken by the Buddha to his the earliest 5 disciples. And when he spoke this sutta, Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, about the non-self characteristic of the 5 khandhas, then all of them attain liberation. So you see that's how important it is. And if we understand the 5 aggregates, we will, at least even if you don't become arahant, so I become a stream enterer. These 5 aggregates are called pancha khandha. Pancha meaning 5, khandha is the aggregates. And generally, we also refer to them as the pancha upadana khandha. Pancha is 5, upadana is clinging or grasping or attachment, and khandha is aggregates. So pancha upadana khandha is the 5 aggregates of attachment, because generally we attach to these 5 aggregates. Now, in these notes by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, it says, examination of the 5 aggregates plays a critical role in the Buddha's teaching for at least 4 reasons. First, because the 5 aggregates are the ultimate referent of the first noble truth, the noble truth of suffering. And since all 4 truths revolve around suffering, understanding the aggregates is essential for understanding the 4 noble truths as a whole. You must remember, in the suttas, it is mentioned when the Buddha attained enlightenment, he contemplated on the 4 noble truths and attained enlightenment. Okay? And the Buddha also mentioned in one of the suttas that it is not because of not understanding the 4 noble truths that he had been going through the round of rebirths again and again. And only when you understand the 4 noble truths, you get out of samsara, the round of rebirths. So understanding the 4 noble truths is very, very important. Now, in the first noble truth, in the description of suffering, the Buddha said, what is suffering? If I remember correctly, something like this. It says, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, dying is suffering. Not to get what one wants is suffering. To be separated from our loved ones is suffering. To associate with those we dislike is suffering. And then ultimately he says, in brief, the 5 aggregates of attachment are suffering. So these 5 aggregates are the source of suffering. So when you understand the 5 aggregates, then you understand the first noble truth of suffering. And Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi continues. Second, because the 5 aggregates are the objective domain of clinging, and as such contribute to the causal origination of future suffering. So here he's saying that the object of clinging is the 5 aggregates, and they are the cause of future suffering. So if you understand the 5 aggregates, then you understand the cause of future suffering, which refers to the second noble truth. Third, because the removal of clinging is necessary for the attainment of release, and clinging must be removed from the objects around which its tentacles are wrapped, namely the 5 aggregates. So here he's saying the object of clinging is the 5 aggregates. So if you want to remove the clinging, you got to understand the 5 aggregates. And fourth, because the removal of clinging is achieved by wisdom, and the kind of wisdom needed is precisely clear insight into the real nature of the aggregates. You need wisdom to remove clinging. And wisdom here means understanding the nature of the 5 aggregates. Remember when we went through the dependent origination of suffering, the first cause was ignorance. And ignorance is not understanding the cause of suffering. And the cause of suffering is these 5 aggregates. So when you understand the 5 aggregates, then you eliminate that ignorance. And that is the start of the chain, eliminating the chain of suffering. Now these 5 aggregates, the first one is the body. What is the body? The body is the 4 great elements and the form derived from them. When we say body, we mean our body and we mean other bodies. External to us, for example, my son, my daughter, my wife, my husband, all that, I and mine. And then the condition for the continuation of the body is nutriment, edible food. And then the second aggregate is feeling. Feeling refers to the 6 classes of feeling. Feeling born of contact to the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind. And the origin of feeling is contact. Contact is the condition for feeling to arise. Third one is perception. Perception means perception of forms, sounds, odors, tastes, tactiles and mental phenomena. Perception is like you see something and you say this is yellow color. That is your perception of it. And then you may see, that is blue. Somebody else who might be colorblind will perceive differently. So perception is not absolute. For example, I perceive a certain person to be very pleasant, but his enemy will perceive him to be a very nasty person. Or somebody perceives somebody else as beautiful or handsome, but another person looking may not perceive him as him or her as beautiful or handsome. So that is perception. Now the condition for arising of perception is also contact. When you have contact at the 6 sense doors, the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind, feeling arises followed by perception and later followed by volition. So the fourth one is volition. The 6 classes of volition. Volition regarding forms, sounds, odors, tastes, tactiles and mental phenomena. That means there is contact at the 6 sense doors. And then, as I explained just now, feeling, perception and later volition arises. So the condition for volition is also contact. And the 5th one is consciousness. The 6 classes of consciousness. Eye consciousness, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind consciousness. And the condition for arising of consciousness is mentality and materiality, Namarupa. Because when Namarupa arises, Vijnana, consciousness also arises. And the same the other way. When consciousness arises, mentality and materiality also arises. Now, ordinary people of the world, we have this Sakaya Ditti. Sakaya Ditti. And this Sakaya Ditti is eliminated when you become an Arya. When you attain Sotapanna. When you attain Sotapanna, there are 3 factors that are eliminated. One of them is Sakaya Ditti. What is Sakaya Ditti? Sakaya Ditti is translated as identity view. That means you identify yourself with the body and the mind. You take the body and the mind to be I, the self, or mind. This is the difference between the uninstructed worldling or ordinary person, Asuttava Putujana, and the instructed noble disciple, Suttava Arya Savaka. Suttava means instructed or learned. So an ordinary person who does not learn the Dhamma is still an ordinary person. But a person who listens to the Dhamma and understands the Dhamma, then he becomes an instructed noble disciple. To break this identity view and become an Arya, you have got to understand the nature of these 5 aggregates. The 5 aggregates, as I mentioned just now, is basically body and mind. The first one, body, is body, and then the other 4 is the mind, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. Sometimes some people make the mistake of thinking that Nama Rupa is body and mind. Nama Rupa is not body and mind. Nama Rupa is the object of consciousness, because when consciousness arises, it must be conscious of an object, and that object is Nama Rupa, and it consists of 2 parts. One is the physical part and one is the mental part. So the physical phenomena is Nama, and the physical phenomena is Rupa, and the mental phenomena is Nama. That's why I mentioned that because of the perception that there is a self, so we feel that I exist, or I am. And this perception of I am or I exist is that link called Bhava, independent origination. That time we went through the dependent origination. Bhava is translated as being. That means you have this perception that I am a being, I exist. In the dependent origination, we find that Bhava conditions jati, birth or rebirth. So once you have the perception that I exist, then you see yourself coming into the world. That is birth. So to eliminate Bhava, we have to see how that I exist comes about. And we will slowly see when we read the suttas that they are connected with the 5 aggregates. Now, if you attain right view, then you're on the way to become Sotapanna. When you attain right view, you have entered the stream. Right? And to attain right view, the Sutta Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 43, tells us that the condition for right view is to hear the voice of another. That means to hear the voice of a teacher teaching you the Dhamma. So actually we need a good teacher to guide us to attain right view. Now the best teacher in the world is the Sammasambuddha. Right? And lucky for us, fortunately for us, his voice is recorded in all these suttas which have been transmitted 2,500 years down to us. We are so fortunate that these words of the Buddha are here to guide us. So if we take the trouble to investigate these suttas, listen carefully and try to understand, then the chances of attaining right view and becoming a Sotapanna are very great. Now, this notes by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi says that clinging to the 5 aggregates occurs in 2 principal modes, which we might call appropriation and identification. In clinging to the aggregates, one either grasps them with desire and lust, chandaraga, and assumes possession of them, or one identifies with them, taking them as the basis for conceit of our views about one's real self. In a phrase often met with in the Khandha Samyutta, we are prone to think of the aggregates as, this is mine, this I am, this is myself. Here the notion, this is mine, represents the act of appropriation, the function of craving. The notions, this I am and this is myself, represent 2 types of identification, the former expressive of conceit and the latter of views. So now, briefly, I will talk a bit about these 5 aggregates. Why is it that we associate the 5 aggregates with the self? First one is body. If your body is beautiful, you say, I am beautiful. If your body is tall, you say, I am tall. If the body is sick, you say, I am sick. So you see, we tend to associate the body with that I or mind. For example, my son. This your offspring, you say, my son. This body is my son. This daughter, this is my daughter. So we either associate body with the I or mind. The second one is feeling. When pleasant feeling arises, you say, I am happy. When unpleasant feeling arises, you say, I am suffering, or I am angry, etc. So it's very easy. You can see easily how feelings also we associate with the self. That perception, like I perceive this to be yellow. I perceive this person to be a nasty person. I perceive this man to be handsome or whatever. So this is also the perception also we identify with my perception. And then fourth one is volition. Volition is using your free will to decide to do this or not to do that. So when a decision is made, our mind works like a computer because of certain conditions, and then the volition is created. So we think that I decided to do this, I decide to do that. But actually, the Buddha says there's no I inside. Just like Buddha gives the example of a banana tree. You start peeling the layers of the banana tree trunk. In the end, you find there's nothing inside, no core. So similarly, the Buddha says when a decision is made, you think, I want this, I don't want that. Actually, there's no I inside. So there is volition. And then the fifth, consciousness. Consciousness, the Buddha says, is like a conjurer. Conjures up one dream after another. One lifetime you see yourself as a human being, and then if you lead your life skillfully, the next you see yourself in a rebirth as a deva or a devi, etc. So consciousness is a conjurer, conjures up all these magic shows. So later, as we go through the suttas, you find these are mentioned. So basically, that is about the 5 khandhas. So always remember, the 5 khandhas refers to the body, and the last 4 is the mind, body and mind. And we always associate the body and the mind to be I or mine. Whenever we refer to ourselves in a past life, we say, oh, that person, that Indian man, was me in the past life. So you associate that body to be yourself. In that lifetime, I experienced happiness, or I experience suffering, or that feeling also you associate with yourself. Similarly for the other aggregates. Or when you refer to yourself now, or when you refer to yourself in the future life, you always refer to this body and the mind as I or mine, as a self. Now we come to the first sutta of the Khandha Samyutta, chapter 22, Samyutta Nikaya, 22.1. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Bhagas at Sumaragira in the Besakala Grove, the deer park. Then the householder, by the way, this is page 853. Then the householder, Nakula Pitta, approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, and sat down to one side. Stop here for a moment. This man, Nakula Pitta, is an old man, and his wife is called Nakula Mata. Pitta and Mata means father and mother. So the son is called Nakula. So he is known as Nakula's father. His wife is known as Nakula's mother. And both of them, husband and wife, are a very loving couple. And according to the later books, they say that Nakula Pitta and Nakula Mata had been parents of the Buddha for many lifetimes. This is just a speculation. Then Nakula Pitta said to the Buddha, I am old, Venerable Sir, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage, afflicted in body, often ill. I rarely get to see the Blessed One and the monks worthy of esteem. Let the Blessed One exhort me, Venerable Sir. Let him instruct me, since that would lead to my welfare and happiness for a long time. The Buddha said, so it is, householder, so it is. This body of yours is afflicted, weighed down and encumbered. If anyone carrying around this body were to claim to be healthy even for a moment, what is that due to other than foolishness? Therefore, householder, you should train yourself thus. Even though I am afflicted in body, that means sick in body, my mind will be unafflicted. Now, thus should you train yourself. Stop here for a while. So here the Buddha says, it's true, your body is old and weak, often ill and all that. But the Buddha said, if anybody can claim that he is healthy, he is a fool, because actually our body is so unreliable. When you think that you are healthy, maybe cancer is already starting in your body. 10 years later only, it breaks out into a lump, then only you realize nobody is healthy, because any time we can die. Then the Buddha said, you should train yourself in this way. Even though I am sick in body, my mind will not be sick. So you see, there are two aspects in us, the body and the mind. The body we don't have much control. The body grows old, we cannot stop it from growing old. And then when it becomes sick, we also cannot stop it from becoming sick. But the Buddha says, your mind is within your control. So don't allow your mind to be sick. Then the householder Nakulapita, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's statement, rose from his seat, and having paid homage to the Blessed One, keeping him on his right, he approached the Venerable Sariputta. Stop here for a moment. You see this Indian tradition, whenever he wants to take leave of the Buddha, he keeps the Buddha on his right side. That's a mark of respect. Indian tradition, that's why I see, like when you listen to the Dhamma, we wear our robe covering the left shoulder, but we expose our right shoulder. That's a mark of respect. Also when we sit in line, the monks, you see the right side is always towards a more senior monk out of respect. So that's why the senior monk always sits on the right. So when he wants to take leave of the Buddha, also he always keeps the Buddha on his right, slowly walks away. He doesn't turn around with the back facing the Buddha. Having paid homage to the Venerable Sariputta, he sat down to one side. And the Venerable Sariputta then said to him, householder, your faculties are serene, your facial complexion is pure and bright. Did you get to hear a Dhamma talk today in the presence of the Blessed One? Why not, Venerable Sir? Just now I was anointed by the Blessed One with the ambrosia of a Dhamma talk. Sometimes this ambrosia is translated as the nectar of the Dhamma talk. With what kind of ambrosia of a Dhamma talk did the Blessed One anoint you, householder? And then, here, Venerable Sir, I approached the Blessed One, and the householder Nakulapita repeats his entire conversation with the Buddha. It was with the ambrosia of such a Dhamma talk, Venerable Sir, that the Blessed One anointed me. And Venerable Sariputta asked him, didn't it occur to you, householder, to question the Blessed One further as to how one is afflicted in body and afflicted in mind, and how one is afflicted in body but not afflicted in mind? And he said, we would come from far away, Venerable Sir, to learn the meaning of this statement from the Venerable Sariputta. It would be good indeed if the Venerable Sariputta would clear up the meaning of this statement. Let's stop here for a moment now. So, Venerable Sariputta asked him, why didn't you ask the Buddha to explain what do you mean by sick in body and sick in mind? And then secondly, sick in body but not sick in mind. Then he said, he admitted he forgot to ask. He said he'd be willing to walk a long way to listen to Venerable Sariputta's explanation. And Venerable Sariputta said, then listen and attend closely, householder, I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, the householder Nakulapita replied. The Venerable Sariputta said this: how, householder, is one afflicted in body and afflicted in mind? Here, householder, the uninstructed worldling, who is not a seer of the noble ones, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, who is not a seer of superior persons, and is unskilled and undisciplined in their Dhamma, regards form or body as self, or self as possessing form, or form as in self, or self as in form. Let's stop here for a moment. So here, Venerable Sariputta says, the uninstructed or unlearned ordinary person, the unlearned ordinary person is the Puthujjana, who is not the seer of the noble ones. Unlearned ordinary worldling, he does not like to associate with Aryans, noble ones. And so because of that, he is unskilled in the Aryan Dhamma. He is not trained in the Aryan Dhamma. So he regards the body as a self, or self as possessing body. That means I am body, or body is mine, or I am in the body, or the body is inside me. He lives obsessed by the notions, I am form. I think I use the word body, it's more meaningful. He lives obsessed by the notions, I am body, body is mine. As he lives obsessed by these notions, that body of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of body, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. Similarly, regards feeling as self, perception as self, etc., volition as self, consciousness as self, etc. In other words, he regards these aggregates as the self, or self as possessing any one of these aggregates, or the aggregate is in the self, or the self is in the aggregates. And then he lives obsessed by the notions, I am the aggregates are mine. As he lives obsessed by these notions, those aggregates of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of the aggregates, there arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. It is in such a way, householder, that one is afflicted or sick in body and sick in mind. Let's stop here for a moment. So here, the ordinary person, he associates the five khandhas, the body and the mind, with the self. He thinks these five aggregates are me or mine, or I am in the five aggregates, or the five aggregates are inside me. But these five aggregates, body and mind, is in the world, and everything in the world is changing. I think it is mentioned somewhere that we can see the body changing very fast, but we don't see the mind changing even faster. So when the body changes, for example, we grow old, we look ourselves at our face in the mirror, year by year we grow older, becomes uglier, the body becomes weaker, we become sick more often. We are very lucky already if we don't get a major sickness like cancer. So many people are getting cancer nowadays. So because of change in the body, and not only your own body, those you associate with yourself, like my son, my daughter. If anything happens to your son or your daughter because of impermanent nature of the world, then you suffer. For example, your son gets cancer, or your daughter gets cancer, or your mother gets cancer, and then you suffer because you associate that body, that other person, to be mine, I and mine. So there's the ordinary worldling. The ordinary worldling regards the body and the mind, whether his own or his beloved ones, to be I and mine. So when change comes, and change must come, in this world, nothing ever stands still. It's constantly changing. That's the nature of the world. So when change comes, and we want to hold on to happiness, we don't want it to change. And then when change comes, we suffer. That is how a person is sick in body and sick in mind. Sick in body is like your body changes or somebody else's body changes, And sick in mind is when you think about it, then you have mental suffering. In addition to the body suffering, you have mental suffering. For example, say your son last night went to the karaoke or somewhere, and got into a fight and got killed. And then you suffer mental pain, and then when you think about it, one thought becomes 10 thoughts. 10 thoughts become 100 thoughts. 100 thoughts becomes 1,000 thoughts. This is the nature of the mind. The Buddha calls it papancha, the tendency for proliferation of the mind. When you think so much, then the suffering becomes unbearable. Some people, because somebody they love has passed away, they become even mad, go out of their mind, deranged. On the other hand, say like somebody becomes sick, suddenly realizes that he got cancer. Then the cancer, the sickness of the body gives him physical pain that is sick in the body. And then when he thinks about it, that his life, the doctor says it's only 6 months more, he has 6 months more to live. And he thinks about it, then he gets mental suffering also. So that is being sick in the body and sick in the mind. But afterwards we hear about the Arya. And how householder is one afflicted in body but not afflicted in mind, or sick in body but not sick in mind. Here householder, the instructed noble disciple who is a seer of the noble ones and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, who is a seer of superior persons and is skilled and disciplined in their Dhamma, does not regard form as body as self, or self as possessing body, or body as in the self, or self as in the body. He does not live obsessed by the notion, I am body, body is mine. As he lives unobsessed by these notions, that body of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of body, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. He does not regard feeling as self, or self as possessing feeling, or feeling as in self, or self as in feeling. Similarly, in regards to perception and volition and consciousness, he does not regard the aggregates as the self, or self as possessing the aggregates, or the aggregates as in the self, or self as in the aggregates. He does not live obsessed by the notion, I am the aggregates, or aggregates are mine. As he lives unobsessed by these notions, those aggregates of his changes and alters. With the change and alteration of the aggregates, there do not arise in him sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair. It is in such a way, householder, the one is sick in body, but not sick in mind. This is what the Venerable Sariputta said. Elated the householder Nakulapita, delighted in the Venerable Sariputta statement. That's the end of the sutta. So here, the learned Aryan disciple who sees Aryans and learns the Aryan Dhamma and trains himself in the Aryan Dhamma, then he realizes that the body and the mind is something that is impermanent, and because it is changing all the time, it is not the self, it is beyond our control. So how can it be ourself? Does not even belong to us, because if something belongs to us, we have control over it. If money is mine, I can use it as I wish. But this body is not yours, because the Buddha says you have no control over it. When it's aging, can you ask it to stop aging? You cannot. When it's sick, can you ask it to get well? You cannot. Beyond your control. Even the mind also. The mind works in a way, sometimes those thoughts that you don't think you should be thinking certain thoughts, you start thinking those thoughts out of habit. Sometimes you don't want to be angry, but you get angry because you find it difficult to control your mind. So the Buddha says that's why the body and mind is not yours. So the Aryan disciple, he dissociates himself from the body and the mind. He does not associate, he does not identify himself with the body and the mind. Although he still has a self, he has the feeling that the self exists, but he can see clearly Because the body and the mind is changing all the time. It cannot be I or mine. So he does not identify with the body and the mind as the self, but he still has a self. But at least when he can do that, then he becomes an Arya. Then when the body changes or the mind changes, the body is sick, but the mind, he does not grieve, he does not affect his mind, because once a person understands the Dhamma, then he understands that the world goes in a certain pattern. You cannot change the world. You cannot change the world. So we have to accept whatever that comes. We just accept and do the best that we can. Whatever comes now is a result of the past. The past karma, the past conditions have created the conditions today. That we cannot do anything about. What we can do is to live skillfully so that the future is better. Right? So understanding that whatever comes now, we cannot change. That is a result of past conditions. Then we just accept it. When we accept it, then there is no mental dukkha. The mental dukkha comes from thinking. When you don't accept it, then you keep thinking, and your suffering multiplies. But you accept whatever comes as something that you cannot change due to previous conditions. So you accept whatever comes along, and then you realize that you can only try to condition the future. So now you change your life to lead a very skillful life, so that tomorrow and the day after you become a happier person. Whatever we do now, it will influence our future. So because of that, because we don't refuse to accept, we accept whatever comes, then we don't have that mental torture that comes from thinking about it. It's only when we don't accept, and then we start thinking and we start regretting and we start all that, and then it multiplies and multiplies until you cannot sleep, until you go out of your mind. The second sutta, 22.2. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sakyans, where there was a town of the Sakyans named Devadaha. Then a number of westward bound monks approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said to him, Venerable Sir, we wish to go to the western province in order to take up residence there. And the Buddha said, Have you taken leave of Sariputta monks? No, Venerable Sir. Then take leave of Sariputta monks. Sariputta is wise. He is one who helps his brothers in the holy life. Yes, Venerable Sir, those monks replied. Let's stop here for a moment. You see, these monks, they are leaving, so they came to inform the Buddha. And because the Buddha has so much respect for Venerable Sariputta, considers Venerable Sariputta as his right-hand disciple, so he told the monks, have you informed Venerable Sariputta that you are leaving? And they said, not yet. They said, you better go and inform Venerable Sariputta. On that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was sitting not far from the Blessed One in a cassia bush. And those monks, having delighted and rejoiced in the Blessed One's statement, rose from their seats and paid homage to the Blessed One. Then keeping him on their right, they approached the Venerable Sariputta. They exchanged greetings with the Venerable Sariputta, and when they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, they sat down to one side and said to him, Friend Sariputta, we wish to go to the western province in order to take up residence there. We have taken leave of the teacher. Stop here for a moment. So you see, Venerable Sariputta what we call the Tai Si Heng, elder Dhamma brother, eldest Dhamma brother. And here they call him friend, Avuso. During the Buddha's time, all the monks address each other as Avuso. It's translated as friend or reverend. But later, when the Buddha was about to enter Nibbana, then he saw that in the future, monks would not have respect for each other. So he instructed the Sangha that junior monks should call senior monks as Bhante. And senior monks can address junior monks either as Avuso or just call them directly by their name. Then Venerable Sariputta told them, Friends, there are wise Katyas. Katyas are the warrior caste. Wise Brahmins, wise householders, and wise ascetics who question a monk when he has gone abroad. For wise people, friends, are inquisitive. What does your teacher say? What does he teach? I hope that you, Venerable Ones, have learned the teachings well, grasped them well, attended to them well, reflected on them well, and penetrated them well with wisdom, so that when you answer, you will state what has been said by the Blessed One, and will not misrepresent him with what is contrary to fact, so that you will explain in accordance with the Dhamma, and no reasonable consequence of your assertion would give grounds for criticism. Let's stop here for a moment. So here, the Venerable Sariputta asked them, in case other people ask you, what does your teacher say? What does your teacher teach? I hope you can answer. Just putting it in a nice way, instead of telling them. When people ask you, what is the Buddha's teachings? You know how to explain or not? So when a monk goes away from the teacher, he is on his own. So he is representing the Sangha. So he should be able to project a good image. That's why in the Vinaya rules, if a monk has not attained 5 vasa, he is considered novice monk, new monk, Navaka Bhikkhu, a new monk. So according to the Vinaya rules, a new monk is not allowed to go here, go there by himself. He's supposed to go with a senior monk, more than 10 years old. Because if a junior monk goes here, goes there by himself, he does not behave well, then he will project a bad image of the Sangha, and especially of his teacher. People will say, oh, this fellow is such and such a Venerable's disciple, see how he behaves. That's the way his teacher teaches him. So, in strict monasteries, if a junior monk wants to go, for example, to visit his parents, even if he goes overseas, a senior monk will accompany him. A lot of monks, they are not learned in the Vinaya. So sometimes when you try to train them in this way, they get annoyed. They think they are just like earlier we read the sutta about the monks. They think the senior monks can go and associate with lay people. I also can go and associate with lay people, and then they said, "We would come from far away, friend, to learn the meaning of this statement from the Venerable Sariputta. It would be good indeed if the Venerable Sariputta would clear up the meaning of this statement." "Then listen and attend closely, friends, I will speak." "Yes, friend," those monks replied. The Venerable Sariputta said this: "There are friends, wise Khatiyas, wise Brahmins, wise householders, and wise ascetics who question a monk when he has gone abroad. For wise people, friends are inquisitive. What does your teacher say? What does he teach? Being asked thus, friends, you should answer, our teacher, friends, teaches the removal of desire and lust. When you have answered thus, friends, there may be wise Khatiyas, etc., who will question you further, for wise people are inquisitive. In regard to what does your teacher teach the removal of desire and lust? Being asked thus, friends, you should answer, our teacher, friends, teaches the removal of desire and lust for body, the removal of desire and lust for feeling, perception, volition, consciousness." I'll stop here for a moment. So here, Sariputta says, if anybody asks, you should say, the Buddha teaches the removal of desire and lust for body, feeling, perception, volition, and mind. That means not to be attached to body and mind. When you have answered thus, friends, there may be wise Khatiyas, etc., who will question you further, for wise people are inquisitive. Having seen what danger does your teacher teach the removal of desire and lust for body, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness? Being asked thus, friends, we should answer thus. If, friends, one is not devoid of lust, desire, affection, thirst, passion, and craving in regard to body, then with the change and alteration of body, there arises in one sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Similarly, if, friends, one is not devoid of lust, desire, affection, thirst, passion, and craving in regard to feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness, then with the change and alteration of the aggregates, there arise in one sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Having seen this danger, our teacher teaches the removal of desire and lust for body, feeling, perception, volition, consciousness. Stop here for a moment. So here, Venerable Sariputta further explained that the Buddha teaches the removal of desire for the 5 aggregates because the 5 aggregates are going to change because they are impermanent. Their nature is to change. So when they change and you are attached to them, then you will experience suffering. When you have answered thus, friends, there may be wise, Katyas, etc., who will question you further, for wise people are inquisitive. Having seen what benefit does your teacher teach the removal of desire and lust for body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Being asked thus, friends, you should answer thus. If, friends, one is devoid of lust, desire, affection, thirst, passion and craving in regard to body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, then with the change and alteration of the aggregates, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair do not arise in one. Having seen this benefit, our teacher teaches the removal of desire and lust for body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness. Stop here again. So here he says, he should explain to them, the benefit is if we don't attach to the 5 aggregates, then when they change, then we will not experience suffering. If, friends, one who enters and dwells amidst unwholesome states could dwell happily in this very life without vexation, despair and fever, and if with the breakup of the body after death he could expect a good destination, then the Blessed One would not praise the abandoning of unwholesome states. But because one who enters and dwells amidst unwholesome states dwells in suffering in this very life with vexation, despair and fever, and because he can expect a bad destination with the breakup of the body after death, the Blessed One praises the abandoning of unwholesome states. Stop here for a moment. So here he explains further. He says the Buddha tells us to abandon unwholesome states because they give us suffering in this very life and the future life. If, friends, one who enters and dwells amidst wholesome states could dwell in suffering in this very life with vexation, despair and fever, and if with the breakup of the body after death he could expect a bad destination, then the Blessed One would not praise the acquisition of wholesome states. But because one who enters and dwells amidst wholesome states dwells happily in this very life without vexation, despair and fever, and because he can expect a good destination with the breakup of the body after death, the Blessed One praises the acquisition of wholesome states. This is what the Venerable Sariputta said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Venerable Sariputta statement. So in the end, the Venerable Sariputta says that the Buddha encourages us to cultivate wholesome states because we will not suffer. Instead, we will experience happiness in this life and in the future life. The Buddha is teaching us to cultivate those things that will give us happiness in this life and the future life, and to avoid those things that will give us suffering in this life and the future life. That is the standard. So sometimes people don't understand. They think the Buddha says don't attach to anything. You attach to anything, it will give you suffering. So meditation, the bliss of jhana also you should not enjoy. The Buddha never said that. The Buddha said, if it leads to suffering, then you should not enjoy it. The Buddha says there are 2 types of happiness. The Buddha says very clearly in the sutta, there are 2 types of happiness. One happiness is the happiness from sensual pleasures, from sights, sounds, smells, tastes, and touch and thoughts. And those happiness that you experience from sensual contact through the 6 senses, whenever you enjoy them, there's a tendency to crave for it. There's always a tendency to crave for it. So when you crave for it and you can't get it because everything is impermanent, one day you may not get it, then you will suffer. But on the other hand, the Buddha says that the bliss from meditation, the Buddha says he encourages his disciples to enjoy it because firstly, those states, the mind is so strong that there is no tendency to crave for that bliss of jhana, meditative absorption. And furthermore, the Buddha says, when you constantly dwell in the states of meditative absorption, you gain 4 advantages. The 4 stages of Aryahood, the 4 fruits of Aryahood, Sotapanna, Sakadagamin, Anagamin, and Arahanthood. So the Buddha never said that you should not attach to anything. The Buddha only says, if you attach to something and it leads to suffering, don't attach. But if you attach to something and it gives you happiness, go ahead. Now we come to, we have passed the time, is it? So interesting, I forgot. Any questions or remarks? That is from seeing the Dhamma clearly. When you study the Dhamma more, and then when we study the Dhamma, unfortunately, you may not be able to understand because your mind is clogged, covered by 5 hindrances. So if you clear your mind of the 5 hindrances, then when we learn the Dhamma, we can understand much better. For example, I mentioned before, like the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. Those monks, because they had attained the 4 jhanas, and they listened to the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, all 5 monks, disciples of the Buddha, all attained arahanthood. But for most of us, because we have not attained the 4 jhanas, when we listen to that same sutta, we are not going to become an arahant. But if you can become a stream enterer, that is excellent already. It's excellent. So coming back to your question, so if you don't want to become sick in mind, then you have to go through this training in the spiritual path. Training in the Noble Eightfold Path is basically a training in Sila, Samadhi and Panya. Moral conduct means keeping your precepts, concentration from meditation, and wisdom from learning the suttas. And it takes time. You cannot expect you study it for 3 months and you're going to become liberated. Yes, that is craving, and that is putting your mind in the past already. When you think of the past and you want to repeat that state, that means your mind is going to the past. But in meditation, your mind should be in the present. Stay with your object. Don't go and think about the past. If you go and think about the past, you are not in the present. So how can you progress? You must not think of the past and you must not think of the future. Now, because of thinking of the past, you think, in the future I want to get this state again. So you are going between your past and the present and the future. So the Buddha says, only stay with the present. Don't have any ideas, any concepts. Just stay with the present, with your object. One thing you must realize, meditation is very difficult. So it takes many years of practice to tame the mind. And even many years of practice, for most people, you still can't tame the mind because you haven't let go. As you meditate, if you want to progress, you must let go of your attachments. So then only you can. Because those things that come up to disturb you in your mind are all your attachments. If they were not attachments, they would not surface in your mind. For example, you had that experience, then you are attached to it, so you want to repeat it. So it's a disturbance to your mind. So it's a path of renunciation, path of letting go. But one thing I wanted to mention is that when you look through the suttas, you find that the Buddha stress on mindfulness of the body. Mindfulness of the body. And for quite some time, I could not understand why the Buddha talked about mindfulness of the body. And then recently, I've come to the opinion that when you are mindful of your body, then the mind does not run away. Does not run away. So, for example, when we are sitting in meditation, and the mind starts to wander, go here, go there, you forgot that you are sitting in meditation. The moment you remember you are sitting here in meditation, your mind stops wandering, comes back. Right? So the point is you want your mind not to wander. The Buddha says, you've got to be mindful of the body. But when we are sitting, it's hard to be mindful of the body. For example, the Buddha says, anapanasati, mindfulness of the breath, is actually a meditation on mindfulness of the body, because the breath is considered a breath body. The breath goes in and the breath goes out. That is considered a body. But as you meditate slowly, the breath becomes finer and finer and finer, so that it's very hard to observe the breath. Then your mind will start to wander. Now one way to bring it back is to move your fingers. Move your fingers lightly. Say, for example, your right finger, and then your left finger, then your right finger, and your left finger. At the same time, if you want, you can do chanting. Right? Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa, like that. So you synchronize your chanting with your movement of your thumb. And this movement of the thumb will keep your mind from straying. The moment you stop moving your thumb, because the mind is weak, if you continue chanting, very soon you get pulled away already. So it's a good practice. For example, when you lie down, you feel you're very tired in the afternoon. You need to lie down. But you're afraid if you lie down, you're going to sleep for a long time. You can do the same thing. You move. For example, if you lie down near a clock, and you hear the clock going tick, tock, and then you can synchronize your finger movement with the tick tock. You tick the right finger, tock, left finger, tick, right finger, tock. As long as you're conscious of your body, the mind does not slide off into a dream state. Because our mind, as you grow older, the mind becomes weaker and weaker. So the moment we lie down, it's very easy to fall asleep. So if you are mindful of the body in this way, so if you are doing anapanasati and you find you are not progressing, you can switch to this movement of your thumb. And you coordinate it with chanting. If you don't want to chant Namo Tassa, you can chant any other thing. For example, Arahang, 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 or Buddho, Buddho. This is one of the things to try out. Those of you who have the book, I suggest when you go back either at night or the next day, whenever you find some free time, go through the suttas. Those that we went through today, if you don't understand, you go through. And then tomorrow you can ask. And then tomorrow you try to read the suttas that are coming up. It's coming up at night so that you are prepared. So that when I go through the suttas, if there's something you don't understand, you can question. So this is the best time to understand the suttas. And you're very lucky you have the book. Try to read it as much as you can. I have to do homework every day, so you also should do some homework. How many times I married?